What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamer Dad channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today we talk about the Division 2. We're going to be talking a little bit about the development side, looking at the back workings. This is something that most of us have very little idea as to how things are working and going on in the background with the development of this game, the past game, and other projects that Ubisoft has. Now, something is actually quite peculiar for this conversation because I mentioned in my last video that we haven't necessarily heard much from Yannick, who is the creative director of the Division 2. So somewhere, somehow, I'm scrolling around Twitter and I'm curious if he answered a common question that's actually going on right now. If you log into Twitter and you know any game developer or you follow them, you notice that there's a question going around that's asking game developers, what was the first game you worked on and which was the latest? I've seen across the board a number of developers that are on Twitter that I follow or are at least within the communications and feeds are answering with pictures of their first game and their latest game. Now, I know that this is something really interesting, but if anybody can look at what Yannick posted, he posts this particular game. I think it's called Cold Lyoko or something like that. Apparently, this is an older game from the Nintendo DS era that has like a TV series, and it's very interesting to see that even as far back then, Yannick had worked on a video game of this nature all the way through the Division 2. I don't know if he has like a profile page or a portfolio page or something. I've never really bothered to look, but it's very critical and interesting that you know and understand that with him, even though he may be, somewhat quiet about, a lot of his pedigree in that regard, I think he does have a lot of experience and is capable to be working on another Division project following the Division 2. Now, why do I raise this point? Why am I coming back with this particular line of argument? I've seen, and I did see that somebody mentioned that, it's not probable that someone like Yannick will be working on a Division, follow-up game or any game within Massive. That's not necessarily the way things work. I disagree, and I've always disagreed with that sentiment because we've seen the way Ubisoft has structured their creative direction. If you go back all the way through the Division 1, this is where you're going to see how things kind of, in a sense, play out. And I'll give you the lowdown at risk of repeating myself for the 1 zillionth time. So in 2016's The Division 1, the creative director, his name is Magnus Jensen. After he delivered the game, his associate creative director kind of seemed to take on the reins, and his associate creative director is Julian Garrity. Many of you know who Julian Garrity is. He is the creative director for The Division 2. Now, you think about the way that happened, the associate creative director for the Division 1 is then put on a full-blown game by themselves, while the creative director for the Division 1 himself, Magnus Jensen, is actually in the process of delivering Avatar as a full-blown video game. While the Division 1 was going on, Yannick maintained a position within a lot of the communications of the game, but then got promoted to assistant creative director in the Division 2. This is where you could already tell that it seemed like he was basically being moved up and getting, in a sense, trained, maybe even mentored to move into the creative direction of a game that is, in a sense, custom to him, or at least a project that he would take the reins of. So it's not necessarily unlikely that you're going to see something like that. And now that Julian Garrity has moved on to the Star Wars project, behold, the creative director now for the Division 2 game is Yannick. So there are different questions that you might ask. And the person who actually said that, I can't remember, it was in a weird comment a while ago. Yannick, sorry for throwing all your stuff up here on, on the internet, but, you're a public figure, but I wanted people just to know this. So if you look on his Twitter page, he is now the current creative director of the Division game at Ubisoft Massive. So this is actually big. So whoever may have said, oh, Yannick doesn't seem to be someone who they're going to, give the custodialship of a video game. Well, you're saying something that has already, you're talking against something that's already a reality. Basically this. The question now is, how deep in development or what project is he the custodian of right now, seeing that Ubisoft Bucharest is actually supporting this game, the Division 2 that is, and he is, in a sense, supervising that. But that's, in my opinion, not enough work for somebody with that pedigree. I think, and my biggest suspicion is that he is in the process of, developing another game. Now, here's a challenge though. Could it be another game entirely? Could it be a whole different project that maybe Ubisoft Massive is trying to move and maybe do a reboot of the franchise in order for them to be able to leverage the modern technology that we have nowadays? As many people may say, the Division is probably in a position where it should be getting, say, more content and, expansions and stuff. We have to admit that the original hardware that was able to support the Division 2 game barely could support it, and that's not possible, nor is it probable to continue to add more content. And this is possibly why Ubisoft Massive would be moving on to another game. I'll discuss this in a different video for a technical, conversation, but for now, I think that conversation about whether or not Yannick is in a position to be developing another game, a game which, or whereby he's got experience around 2 titles of it, which is the Division, to me is a no-brainer. In fact, it's kind of weird that anybody would be doubting at this point. But I thought I'd bring it to light and pretty much, showcase it here so that people can start seeing for themselves. All right, that's it for me. I appreciate you guys' time and audience. Talk to me in the comment section, and hopefully we'll be able to talk in another one. Peace out.